You can let it roll a little longer. I got to get hyped up for today. Actually, I'm already hyped up. I mean, just think about what's going on in the sports world if you're Jon Adams. So, all right, let's cut the music and jump right in. So, if you're looking on the internet, I'm all hopped up on the junk today, buddy. I'm hopped up because the Vikings are 3-0, and they're taking it to people. I am so excited about this, and I'm tempering it. Remember at the beginning of the season I said the first 3 games of the season are preseason games, meaning that teams are rounding in the form, they're figuring out what works. The Vikings have just got to jump on the competition. That's the way I'm tempering this, because as people get their systems up and running, the Vikings are very well prepared. They're well coached. That's all playing out right now. But the key is, what are other people doing to get better? And like I say, the halfway point, how many times have the Vikings been 6-0 or 8-0, and then they end up going down the tube. So I'm tempering all this excitement, but boy, you got to love what you saw this past weekend. Like I said, if Sam Darnold can be a game manager, which he's not even a game manager now, he is actually orchestrating an offense that is outstanding. And so I'm excited about that, and the fact that you look at the running game. Now, there weren't a whole lot of moves made on the offensive line. I think it's just Blake Brindell is the only new piece. Isn't that correct, James? I believe it's just Brindell.
As of right now, yeah, you have 4 guys that were big impact guys last year. You have one that's injured at the moment that came back. I'm drawing a blank on his name, the one from Denver.
Right, Dalton Reisner.
Yeah, Dalton Reisner, yep.
Yeah, well, and that's funny because if you look at the Vikings roster, up and down this roster, they have picked up elite talent that has been injured previously. If you look at the guys, they've had some sort of thing that happened with them, and it's throughout the roster. And I remember when they picked up Reisner, Denver was like, good luck with him staying healthy. Then you look at Aaron Jones, right? So it would appear that the Kool-Aid is, we're going to pick up guys that we know are talented, but we'll take the risk that they get injured.
Well, Andrew Van Ginkel, who's been possibly the best guy on our defense through 3 games, he was also a guy who had a season-ending injury last year in Miami.
Right.
I mean, Jonathan Grenard had probably the best game of anybody overall for the Vikings, but I think that was more or less him trying to show up his former team.
Well, listen, when you're going up against your nemesis, when you got to, and it doesn't any sport, I mean, think about it. My biggest nemesis was my brother George, and every time we had a little competition, I brought it a little bit harder than I did against my younger siblings anyway. So, so that's I think you're exactly right. But I like that, and the fact that we don't have all the pieces on offense. Defense, like I said before, I thought Flores, once he got his guys in, he could scheme, he could do what he does like he did. I mean, you remember the defense in Miami, they didn't really have any superstars, but he had one of the top 5 defenses in the league, and he still might be there if they didn't want to tank so bad, but actually he wouldn't be there because evidently, according to Tua, he's too tough. You got to have a little what do you call? I almost said you almost have to have gentle parenting. And if I go off on the rant on gentle parenting, because I have people in my family that believe in gentle parenting, and I'm vexed by it. I'm vexed by it because we're talking about trying to turn out well-rounded people, but yet we don't have parameters in place or strictures in place when they're needed. And so it's like free reign. So anyway, how I got on the gentle parenting from Viking football is beyond me. So if you want to call in and talk about Viking football, you look at the odds, James, it looks like Green Bay is still favored by 2.5 with a backup quarterback. And that, to me, it's like, what?
I think there's a lot that goes into it. The Vikings have played really well the first 3 weeks, so the defense is preparing for two different quarterbacks because the earliest they thought that Love could come back would be this week, but usually the home team gets 3 points, right, when they're at home.
See, I'm not a bettor, so I don't know.
So if it was a neutral site, the Vikings would be favored by 0.5 point. So if they were at U.S. Bank Stadium, based off of the numbers, the odds, and how they want to get people to bet and fired up for it, the Vikings would be 3.5 point favorites at home at this point based off of those numbers. And so you think about a divisional game on the road, Lambeau Field. I'm not surprised that it's a 2.5 point spread on it in favor of Green Bay, just for the reasoning of it being in Green Bay in a divisional game. You never know what truly to expect. We could get a similar game to Houston. You might end up getting one of those ugly games like we saw with Atlanta taking on Kansas City in Sunday Night Football.
You know what? I didn't know that betting had such an impact on sports. Did you?
No, never noticed it.
I thought we just went by the raw data, James. Well,
they try to, and then they go, how can we make more money?
I guess I could see that now if you want people to bet. I mean, if you did make the Vikings favorites, nobody would bet on that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's funny because I've never been a big bettor. I've just come to understand what the over and under is. You know?
Oh yeah.
And so I've been watching Bad Beats with
Scott Van Pelt. Oh yeah, and Stanford Steve. Those guys are gold.
So I'm watching this thing, and it's funny because I grew up in a family where we did listen. When we had Monopoly game, my dad threw out the dice. You know, he didn't allow gambling. He didn't allow cards in the house. He didn't drink, smoke, none of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even now as a 59-year-old man, there are still things that I'm a little sheltered about, and one of them was understanding betting. So to watch Scott Van Pelt and his cohort there, Bad Beats are amazing to me, and it really does. You really have to think to yourself, people say, well, the NFL is scripted and stuff like that. But then you look at Bad Beats, and it's like, well, can they really script it?
Yeah,
I think you can influence the game. I'm not going to be that naive not to say that you can't influence the game. And we have plenty of people talking about, there was a quarterback that came out that talked about how all he had to do was just not put the ball on the target, when it comes to point shaving or hitting the over or the under. But, either way, I'm excited about what I see for the Vikings. Now, when is Hawkinson coming back?
I believe the earliest possibility, I think, is after the bye week. So you have this week, week 4, week 5 in London against the Jets. Then you have the bye week in week 6. Ugh. I think the hope is to get him integrated back in the bye week, but it's not a guarantee at this point.
Well, I like that Munn kid. I liked him last year. He's steady. He's a good blocker.
Well, he was from the O'Connell tree. He came over from L.A. with O'Connell.
Well, I'll tell you, the way that Darnold zipped that ball into him, and he just caught it with. It reminded me of the way Kyle Rudolph used to catch passes in the end zone,
one-handed.
Once that ball was in there, it was done. I mean, it just swallowed up and you look at the windows that Darnold is throwing into. It's pretty amazing how, and like I said, I think it's just the fact that he's been in a number of systems, but he's actually, Kevin O'Connell played for the Patriots, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got a quarterback that understands what quarterbacks go through, and him having been with Tom Brady, I mean, I think a lot of his work ethic and his preparation is based on his time with Brady, and he's passing along to these quarterbacks. So that's enough Viking football. We got a lot to talk about as far as I'm concerned. I went to the Bison game this weekend, and I was looking in the stands, and I thought it was pretty empty, James. But they said there were 17,000 fans there, and it was homecoming. But by halftime, the place was half empty. And I just thought to myself, what is going on? Whatever happened to really being a fan? A fan where you stayed until the game was over, whether your team won or lost. Well, I tell you what, we'll discuss the whole Bison fan thing when we come back from the break. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. Hey, welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams on a balmy, it's 83 degrees out. Well, it says, 83 degrees out. And I got a sweatshirt on because it's this studio usually sits at about 69, 70 degrees. And I'm tropical, so I got to wear a sweatshirt. And as you can see, it is the black on black Viking sweatshirt because the weeks that the Vikings win, I've got to represent. You know, hopefully I can wear this for 18 straight games. That would be awesome. So we were talking about the Vikings, and before we move on to the Bison and the crowd size and what do you do, and part of it is everybody's got to answer to everything. And I was reminded by a friend that despite what I think, I don't know anything, but I do have an opinion on it. So I'm going to speak on that in a minute. But looking at what I see from the Minnesota Vikings as well as the Green Bay defense, I'm putting the Vikings on 34 points. 35, I guess 35. I honestly believe that they have yet to play their best game, okay? And I also think that they're clicking, but you see some things that are kind of like, for instance, the running game is tight, but I think it's play calling that makes it tight. I do like the fact that the past 2 games, whenever they've wanted to run out the clock, they've been able to do so. That's new for us Viking fans, okay? But also there's such a thing as when you want to have long drives. We know that Sammy can sling it around the yard, but we need to also be able to shorten the game with a running game so that our defense stays off the field too. That's all part of the winning formula. So I think that, with Malik Willis, he's going to be the first quarterback that we see that has some wheels, that's going to be escape and get out of the pocket. Stroud isn't really a get out of the pocket type of guy, And so, but last week, Malik Willis ran for 73 yards. So it'll be interesting in how they scheme for that. So that's my prediction. If you want to call in and give me your prediction or insight in the Viking game along with other topics, bring it on. I'd love to have some conversation with people other than me and James. It'll make for interesting radio. But now let's get back to the Bison and the fan base. I hadn't been to tailgating. So the product has really changed now, and they have it seems like it's less, but the content is more. Like to the south of the stadium, I think they have a DJ or something. I don't know. Were you out?
Yeah, I was in McKendree last week. So I was in Lebanon, Illinois.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
fun stuff.
Yeah, so being out there, I thought it was a lively atmosphere. I was disappointed that people left at halftime, but then I had to be reminded that that's been a characteristic of Bison fans since the beginning of time. Actually, you know what? That's not true. In the 80s and 90s, when the Bison were playing at Dakota Field, I don't remember people leaving early. And is that before?
Just a little bit.
Oh my
gosh! I wasn't coming up here until the probably early 2010s.
Among other things like the great atmosphere, but I think Bison fans have to temper the fact that if you're bored with success, wait till you have a downturn. People have to learn to enjoy what's happening because it's unprecedented. And all you got to do is look across the river. Believe it or not, but Concordia and Morehead State used to be nationally ranked powers year after year under Ross Forchie, and Christofferson, okay? And it was never a foregone conclusion over there that we were going to win a national title or anything like that. We always felt like our administration didn't really care about football. They didn't really cultivate it. And to their credit, they've gotten better. I mean, it helps to have some of the amenities, the upgraded NIMSIC and stuff. But I think Bison fans got to be careful because at any moment your program can turn. Remember when they were working their way up to FCS and they had that blackout period? Remember what those teams were like? I mean, the year before the Bison run, 2010, the average crowd was 13 to 15,000, if that. And for games that didn't matter, it was even less than that. And I distinctly remember, and Bison fans call in and correct me if I'm wrong, the year before they lost to Eastern
Washington.
Eastern Washington, fans were calling for Craig Bohl's head. I remember it like it was yesterday. There were boosters. He didn't know what he was doing. He's this, he's that. Go back and look at the stuff. I love the fact that we can go back in time and actually look at documents and say, oh, they did say this. There were people that really didn't care for Craig Bohl with his 3 yards in a cloud of dust and his conservative passing scheme and, fundamentals of defense, and it seemed like it caught fire when the Bison lost on the end zone, and I forget the kid's name. They didn't get in the end zone. Well, they said he didn't get in. He got in. And then the next year is when they started their historic run. Well, you have to be careful because if you end up back there, you know, the revenue generated by football, okay, you get used to that, right? And if the crowd sales go down, ticket sales have got to go up. Now, for years, we didn't have beer sales in the Fargo Dome, and all of a sudden we started having beer sales, and I think that's directly related to trying to keep people in the stands, trying to create a more inviting environment for people to play. I thought it was funny because seems to me from the tailgates that I've been to, we don't necessarily need beer by the time we get in the stadium. But you know what? What do I know? I mean, I don't run an athletic program, but it's just something that was in my head as I was watching the Bison game. So we'll move on to some of the topic of my show. We'll go to current events. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Fargo's in danger of having their credit rating reduced. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Moody's rating company, but they decide, you know, they're like the people that go along and decide credit ratings for government entities. And so we were at AA or AAA, one of the two, but that we are in danger of having that reduced. And part of it is your savings to debt ratio is out of whack or could be out of whack. So we got a warning, which means that, and you know, you don't want your credit rating to go down. I mean, all of us know that. And that's very rudimentary. But I want to get into this because I feel like for the past 2 years, we've kind of been given the flim-flam by the city commission. Okay? We're developing things. And let's start with the whole economic development piece. Now, 5 years ago when they talked about building the diversion, okay, when they were the whole diversion topic, there was supposed to be an influx of all of these people, all of these businesses that would help with taxes. You know, the more people, the more taxes, right? The more people, the more they're going to spend. They're going to get taxed there. You guys know we get taxed on everything. Well, the budget is based on projections, okay? So if your projections are wrong, but you're spending like your projections are right, it can get you in trouble. And anybody who thinks that I'm off on that, feel free to call in. But here's my problem, okay, is that we were told, hey, we're going to balance the budget for this year, okay? And John Strand, he says, hey, I want the COLAs to stay at 4 or 4.5%, and that's the cost of living increase, okay? Dave Pepcorn says, I'd rather not have COLAs at all, okay? Our employees are well compensated as it is. Right now, we don't need a cost of living increase. Now, the interesting thing is it sounds like I'm siding with Dave on this, but in fact, if the city is run as a business, where's the first place, the instant place that you can cut to make a difference? Well, it's salaries. That's where we start. So we know that we have a bloated communications department. We know that we're paying a assistant city administrator $200,000 or $150,000, $180,000, whatever it is. It seems to me that our salaries in the city of Fargo are out of whack. And it's funny because they say we need these salaries to attract competent and the best people, okay? And I'm of a mind to say we can find plenty of competent people just in the kids that are graduating from schools around here. James, you have an idea how many students do we have graduate? What do you think?
Oh boy,
20,000 at least a year.
Between high school and college? Or just high school?
No, colleges.
College?
So you've got Morehead State, you've got NDSU, you've got
Concordia.
I mean, out of the thousands of
NDSCS
people
branch.
but out of the thousands of students that graduate,
You probably have 5,000 or 6,000, I would think, a year.
okay, so you think out of that 5,000 or 6,000, if we needed a kid to do the budget for the city of Fargo, you think we'd have to pay them what we're currently paying some of these people in office? I don't think so. I don't think so. And we keep talking about experience, but we have assistant city administrator who has that job because she's been there for a long time. Okay, well, guess what? So has Mike Redlinger. So why don't we take some of these students, have them learn at the feet of some of these people that have been in a long time, and save some money that way? I mean, look, that's just my way of thinking it. And so we hear all this rhetoric coming out of the city commission about, we're trying to attract talent, we're trying to do this and that, and now our credit rating is being affected. Okay? We've always been conservative. We've always been good with our money. And now we've attracted the attention of Moody's, and not in a positive way. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this because this all matters. If you think that your taxes won't go up to bolster the money that we need to maintain our credit rating, you're absolutely wrong. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000. Welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. It's been interesting because I had a whole list of things to talk about today, James, but it seems Viking football and Bison football and the city commission, you know, I have no idea why. I do have an idea why I'm so hard on the city commission. And I wouldn't say hard on them, but it's about accountability, you know. I speak to people every day that have some sort of hardship or, you know, they need information and things like that. And part of it is a lot of people don't understand why we're in the situation that we're in. And so it's like, is it because they don't take the time to find out, or is it because they don't have the time? And so I've said this before, since our sons have left home, it seems like I'm more busy now than I ever was when they were at home. And part of it is of my own design, because if I have too much idle time, James, who knows what will happen in the city that I'm in. But, you know, so it's like, all right, I've always said that economically and socially, Fargo is a great place to live. You know, and I have fantastic friends. I have fantastic supporters. My wife, amazing, right? Well, I like where I live, and I want to keep it that way. And so when I look at what the city commission does with no transparency, you know, we had a budget, then a day, 24 hours later, we had a different budget. We had a different direction we were going to go. We have commissioners that can't get together to figure out how to save taxpayers' money. And I had Dave Pepcorn on the show, and he said, I think government should be about this. And there were three things. And none of them included reducing taxes. None of them included reducing the burden on the citizens in Fargo. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, but to me, I didn't hear much coming out of the way of, look, if we don't meet the needs of people that are on a drain in our community, they become more of a drain on our community. You know, sometimes we have to deal with this so that a situation doesn't get worse. Okay? So, you know, Dave said he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, and I did a little digging. Those are some pretty well-off bootstraps, you know, which means that the guy may have been out of touch with the people that he's seeking to remove from the engagement center, you know, or maybe he doesn't really understand what's happening here. But either way, there's a disconnect, and now I really feel like we need to get it fixed. Okay, because as a businessman in the community, as a person who's getting ready to retire in the community, we need to have a great credit. There's no reason that we should even be having this conversation about the credit rating of Fargo, North Dakota, based on the amount of taxes that we pay. And it all comes down to this: stupid spending, okay? Poor planning, poor development, okay? Maybe we're giving businesses too many tax breaks if it's affecting our bottom line. And you could tell me, well, they're going to bring in. The one thing that I don't like people to do is tell me what's going to be like they have a crystal ball. Okay? And that, it seems like that's what's happening, is the projections have been so way out now. We haven't kept up with our projections, and, you know, you're going to hear excuses. Well, you know, we had COVID and we had inflation. Okay? Now, other than inflation, a lot of the economic indicators are there that we're weathering the storm pretty good. The funny thing is, those did not have as much of an effect on the Fargo community as it did the rest of the world. Okay? But we saw some things that the city commission did do, like using COVID money on programs that they knew weren't going to be around, ballooning spending with no idea how to take care of it after COVID money. So that's something that we have to keep our eyes on as citizens, I can tell you that. Moving on to another point, Um, I can tell you guys, I am completely over the whole political landscape. I'm tired of the campaigns. I'm tired of the sniping. And after last week, I found myself sitting out on my deck smoking a cigar and just really frustrated with what I'm hearing coming out of government. You know, whether it's the national government or the local government, I'm very dissatisfied, and I was dang right angry about it. And here I'm supposed to be relaxing on my deck, and so I had to go back to some things that I learned after my mom passed away because um, that was a very difficult time, you know. And it's like you almost lose your mind when you lose a parent, you know. But yet, life doesn't allow you to grieve 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 properly. You know, you still got to get up and you've got to do the things that you're supposed to do. And so I had to go back. Dr. Raul Sanchez was on early in the year, the middle of the year, the summer. We were talking about methods we could use to maintain our positive mental health. And so I had to dig that stuff out because I felt myself having that slide where I get into a negative attitude and then I wake up and I'm pissed off or I just, I can't engage people. I don't feel excited about life. And so it's something that your mental health is a very fragile thing. And if you're not paying attention to it, a lot of people have depression. A lot of people have anxiety, and it's unresolved depression and anxiety because let's face it, I'll speak on men. We've always been told, you know what? You need to be rugged. You need to be tough. Men don't show emotion, that whole 9 yards. In the past 20 years, I'll say 20 years, we've seen society shift and men have become more in touch with these emotions, okay? Well, that's good because you're opening yourself up to that exploration, but also we were taught in a very limited fashion. How do you deal with those things? Excuse me. You can see it all the time. A guy is weeping on TV, and there'll be people out there mocking him, making fun of him, or I've got friends that'll say, "Hey, listen, don't be such a baby. Not up and let's go get this thing done." But we know that that's not the way the human brain works. So with that, just some tips. Maybe they'll help some people. Maybe they won't. But in all that we're bombarded with the negativity, we need to have different areas that we can help ourselves get back to normal. And it all starts with, for me, it starts with prayer. Okay? And that's my number one go-to. Even when things are going good, I just feel like if I'm communicating with the Lord, I can rest. Because whatever happens, it's the will of the Lord is going to take over. Now, there are times when I think, well, that's not the angle I was shooting for, but I have to trust that, and I no longer say, this is what the Lord wants because good things happen to bad people, and I have friends that have had tragedy visit them. And it's hard to fathom where the Lord's will plays into that. James, Big Game James says we're up against the break. When we come back, I'll give you my 5 keys to maintain positive mental health. This is Jon Adams with Talk of the Town. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000, or you can email at studio@wdayradionow.com. Hey, welcome back to the final segment of Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. We've gone up and down the road on various topics, and I enjoy bringing you guys information, whether you need it or not. But, I was saying before the break that my mental health took a hit last week, and not in a big way, but I'm exhausted with what's coming out of the political arena on the national level and the local level, as well as what's happening internationally in the world. It seems like the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has taken a back seat up until these last 2 weeks, and it's like, I'm sorry, but as leaders of the world, we should be stepping in, doing something about this, not just paying lip service to it. So, just the tragedy of the world. So anyway, I thought, you know what? Let's talk about some ways that we can maintain a positive mental outlook, and to decrease anxiety, decrease depression. And that, like I said at the top of the list, for me, it's prayer and being spiritual in what I do. Waking up, thanking the Lord helps. Reminding myself that, it's important that I have that connection, because I can tell you honestly, without my relationship with Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be here, and I just feel that. And so whether you're Christian or Muslim, whatever you believe, whatever that spiritual entity is that you pray to, or that you use to move yourself forward. Some people use meditation. Whatever that is, it's important to lean into those things every day. My dad was a minister, and he said, you don't put your faith up on a shelf and take it down when you need it. You wear it like a blanket. It's around you at all times. And so that's the first thing. And these are all just recommendations by Jon Adams. You don't have to follow them, but it's what works for me. I'm a golfer, and I used to be a really terrible golfer. Now I'm just an average terrible golfer. So, but the way I got to be just a terrible golfer was I started listening to people that knew better than me and were better players, and subsequently I'm not so terrible anymore. The second thing is the study that says that people in the United States don't get enough sleep. It's appalling. Sleep is second only to food. And a lot of people aren't getting enough rest, I'm 59, and I can tell you that at some point during the day, I'm going to go home and take a nap. And boy, does that feel good every time I do. We have to make sure that we're maintaining good sleep habits, and it's a subtle thing, You stay up late one night, or you can't get to sleep, so you're watching TV, or, the killer is the cell phone in the bedroom. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep with my screen open and rolled over to find a hot phone that could probably probably set fire. And I've had to learn that, when it's time to go to bed, you got to put that thing on your nightstand and turn it over and don't touch it. As you guys know, a couple weeks ago, my wife and I, we took up pickleball. And we're excited about it. It's something that it's low impact as far as I'm concerned, it's low impact because the people that we play with understand that if it's not within reach where I could bend over comfortably to get it, they're going to win the point. But nonetheless, it's still fun to get out. We play with Roger and Jackie, and we play with Kayla and Christian, and it's a fun activity. And just being out in the fresh air and hanging out. Physical activity is the quickest way to release those endorphins that help you feel better. The hardest thing to do is to get going with physical activity. But once you get over the feeling of, I'm going to die, and then you get some water in you, it feels good when you're done. But, I try to lift weights from time to time and get on and do aerobic activity. And I fell miserably about 60% of the time. But you need to get out and you need to be moving. So, spirituality, sleep, exercise, and maintaining a positive mental outlook. You know, my theory on life is, and I've been through some stuff, but I've always managed to find somebody that's worse off than me. And I say that from time to time, God will just put those people in front of me to remind me that first, things could always be worse. And I don't look at it as things could always be worse. I always look at it as, look at how great I have life. Look at how wonderful my life is. Now, even being young, I always figured I would be successful. You know, I just knew that, first of all, I knew what I wanted, and the first was not to be poor. Okay? When you go up with a limited income or you're on welfare, you learn in a hurry, I don't like that lifestyle. And so I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make money so I'm not poor. Okay? And with financial stability comes the ability to live life the way you want to. I don't have any big expectations. I don't need to travel the world. I don't need to have a Mercedes or anything like that. I don't need a 300 million square foot home. That's not me. But good friends and great experiences, worth more than all the money in the world. You know, simple things like I see Lisa Hansen's on here, by the way. Jon and Lisa are good friends of ours, and we like to, you know, everybody likes to go out to dinner. One of my favorite things is to get together with them as couples. We put steaks on the grill, baked potato, and we just sit and we relax. There might be some wine or beer, but just sitting, relaxing, those simple things. You know, enjoying the simple things in life, and that's what life is all about, and especially if you could do it with friends. And then the last one is surround yourself with people that care about your well-being and have a positive outlook. I stay away from the people that just drain the emotional life force out of me. And so these are just tips, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. James says I got about 30 seconds. This has been Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. And remember, it's never as bad as we think if we choose to look at it in the right way. So this has been Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. And as always, stay black.